You're listening to 94.4 FM Salford City Radio, the Friday Sports Show.
You're listening to Salford City Radio 94.4 FM, the Friday Sports Show for your host, Jimmy Petruzzi, bringing you news from the local area and around the world. And we're very fortunate in this show to interview some of the world's best athletes, sports people, footballers, trainers, people who work in sports across a variety of disciplines, sports psychologists. We also have a segment where we interview people in the field of psychology and related fields, some of the world's most influential people in the field of psychology and related fields, who give us insight into their perspective on all things psychology related. Today we have a very special guest who's going to give us an insight into what it's like to be a professional athlete at the very highest level. Tremendous athlete in a very challenging sport, at least challenging sport for me it would be, and many of us, but we'll sort of get more of an idea of what it's like to compete in Taekwondo. And Rebecca McGowan is a professional athlete for GB, and no doubt she'll give us more of an insight into what it's like to train and participate in Taekwondo. So Rebecca, thanks for coming on board the show. Great to have you on board.
Hi. Lovely to be here.
Yeah, great to have you on board. And I suppose let's sort of start from the beginning, Rebecca. How did you get into Taekwondo? What sort of motivated you to go into Taekwondo?
Yeah, so I started Taekwondo when I was 5. The reason that I got into Taekwondo was because I had a friend and he was a boy, and some days we got on and some days we used to fight and argue. And I found out that he did Taekwondo, and literally all I thought was, well, if he can do it, then I'm going to do it better than him. So I went along to my local club, the one that he went to, and I started and literally just fell in love with it, like, instantly.
Brilliant. And, I mean, obviously you've progressed since then, and you've had a remarkable journey. At what point did you think, Rebecca, that you could perhaps compete at the very highest level? I mean, at what point did you think, well, okay, it's one thing sort of starting a sport or discipline, but then when did you have the realization that you could possibly compete at the highest level?
I think I decided very quickly that I wanted to do it at the highest level. I'm like talking within a few sessions, sparring sessions that I'd done. I wanted to. I found out that it was in the Olympics, and I wanted to. That was my dream from then on. From being 5 years old, I wanted to go to the Olympics, and that was my aim. That was my dream in life. In terms of when I realised that I possibly could, probably more towards the end of my junior career. So when I was maybe 14, I had a very, very good junior career. Like every competition that I was going to, I was managing to medal. So then, when I was 15, I was asked to join the GB Academy, and I moved in at 16. So I guess the realization hit that I could do it when I actually was asked to join, and when I managed to join the academy.
Fantastic. And what would you say some of your career highlights have been? Obviously there's many, and I'm sure that there's going to be many more, but what would you say up to this point your career highlights have been so far, Rebecca?
My career highlight is actually my most recent competition. I recently won the European Championship. So that's the biggest competition that I've managed to win so far. So that's definitely at the top of my career so far.
Fantastic. And what does that feel like to sort of to win after all that sort of hard work and dedication?
Honestly, it was unbelievable. It was like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Didn't have the easiest journey to get there due to injuries and stuff. So to finally prove to not only myself but to everyone that I actually could do it and that I had it in me to do it was just a relief, like a massive sigh of relief.
Fantastic. And in terms of like preparation, you talked about the injuries and you just mentioned how the training that you've put in to get to where you are. From a physical training point of view, what's the sort of training like? Obviously, without sort of giving away any sort of insights to your competitors, but what sort of physical training do you guys do? Is it mainly technique, or do you sort of train, obviously technically and sort of physically too?
Yeah, so our training varies throughout the week. Throughout the week we have like a good mixture of, so we like sparring and fighting, and then our technical phase. So we train, like each day sort of changes. We have more technical days on a maybe Monday, Wednesday, more tactical days where we look into how we would maybe apply stuff. That would be on a Tuesday, Friday, and then on a Tuesday, Thursday, and then on a Friday we all come together and we just spar and try and put into practice everything that we've been training for throughout the week. But on top of that, we also do S&C work, so strength and conditioning, and we do 2 strength sessions a week and 2 conditioning sessions a week.
Fantastic. And what's it like competing in Taekwondo, Rebecca? I can imagine there's sort of, the adrenaline in terms of you're there, and I mean, what's it actually like to compete against someone in Taekwondo? What's the feeling like, the vibe like?
Well, the day as a whole is just a whirlwind of emotions and different just feelings. In terms of going into the fight, it's, I guess, a pretty surreal sort of feeling. I forget that not many people know what that feels like. So, you walk into the ring and it's literally just you looking at someone and it's like, okay, we're going to fight for 6 minutes now. I'm going to try and kick you in the head, you're going to try and kick me in the head.
Absolutely.
But I think it's the main thing for me is just focus. Just trying to keep focused and trying not to think about them too much. I have my plan that I follow during a fight, and I try to follow during a fight. So in terms of like what I'm feeling and what I'm thinking going into the fight is I'm just wanting to commit to that plan and execute that plan to the best of my ability.
Absolutely, because I suppose the margins are so fine in terms of winning, and things must go really, really quickly. And do you prepare mentally, Rebecca? Do you have like a mental skills routine that you do, or?
Yeah, so everyone's got a very personalised, individualised mental plan. For some people it might be their way of getting rid of nerves. For other people it might be putting themselves in a mindset that's going to get the best out of them. So everyone on our team has a very personal mental warm-up that they do. And everyone's is very, very different depending on the person.
Yeah, and absolutely, their own sort of individual, and absolutely. And in terms of yourself, I mean, sort of Taekwondo, do you also have an interest in other sports too? I mean, whether it's sort of fighting or just generally, or are you completely focused in?
I like to watch other sports, but I've never done other sports. So when I started Taekwondo at 5 years old, that was my sport for life. Like I never really ventured out. I love to watch other sports. I tried actually a little bit of weightlifting, which I really enjoyed. Weights is one of my favourite things to do, and powerlifting, and S&C. So I like to watch other sports, but I mainly stick to just. I'm not very good at other sports, so I try to stick to just Taekwondo.
And you've obviously done very well, and I think that's I think it's sort of, I guess when you get to a level, it's about really focusing on sport that you excel at, and spending so many hours in a day and a week. And I suppose one thing that interests me in terms of, I mean, I really like martial arts, and I sort of for many years have an interest in many martial arts, and I think it's great for life as well. But do you feel that sort of doing Taekwondo sort of helped you in life in general, and other areas of life too, in terms of whether it be sort of focus in general in life or school?
100%. I think the biggest thing that I've taken away from Taekwondo and that I've learned growing up through Taekwondo is the discipline. It's a very disciplined sport, a very respectful sport. So growing up, we wouldn't get away with, when we were maybe in sessions and in our classes, we wouldn't get away with disrupting the class or acting out or playing up. That was just a massive no-no. So I think that I definitely took that into other things, and I still carry that with me to this day. So even when I was in school, it was just built within me to not be disrespectful, to just remain very disciplined, and I think that also helps with stuff like school. So like keeping on track with all of my schoolwork, and just that sort of stuff. I definitely learned that from Taekwondo.
Absolutely, and I think as well as that, I mean, you know, I've seen and spoken to people who've sort of taken up martial arts. You know, perhaps they were maybe bullied at school and they took up martial arts, and it sort of gave them some confidence too, Rebecca, in themselves. You know, I'm not sort of advocating to sort of go around and sort of, you know, and sort of, you know, from I'm not sort of suggesting that they go and sort of, you know, do their martial arts but just having that confidence to know that, you know what, you've got this discipline, you're focused and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Did you find that sort of for yourself? Obviously, you know, your inroad into it was different to you know, some people who sort of take it up for various reasons, but do you find it gave you confidence too, in general, too, doing martial arts, doing Taekwondo?
It's never something I've really thought about, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think it probably gave my mum and dad a lot of...
yeah.
It probably helped their confidence in me,
Yes.
knowing that I know how to defend myself, because that's the biggest thing in Taekwondo. That you learn as you progress through is self-defense. That's what Taekwondo is all about.
Yeah.
So I think it probably helped them a lot as I was growing up, knowing that if something happened, I was able to defend myself.
Yeah.
And I think it's just something that I've learned to do. Like I never really thought about it as I know how to fight. Like, don't mess with me. Blah 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 blah. It's just something that I just did, and I just could do. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and absolutely, and you know, and I suppose with yourself, because you took it up so young as well, and it was a natural progression to sort of do as well as you can. But you know, I can sort of, as a parent myself, I can sort of second in terms of, you know, wanting to, you know, obviously you want your children to be able to sort of, you know, not just a question of defending themselves, but just have that sort of confidence really, and you know,
100%.
apply themselves, and I think that control too, Rebecca. I mean, sort of having that control, the controlled energy, you know, I think that the discipline martial arts teaches is obviously, you know, self-control and discipline. And in terms of, you know, from your aspirations sort of, you know, going forward, I mean, you've achieved a lot, and sort of, you know that there's sort of a lot more you sort of want to achieve. But where do you sort of see yourself going from here, Rebecca? What are your sort of, you know, I suppose there's things you're sort of going to keep, you know, close to your chest, but generally speaking, where do you see your vision from where you are?
So my end goal right now is Paris 2024.
Yes.
Those Olympics. We've also got the World Championships that are this year. So short term, it would be to go win the World Championships in October this year.
Yeah.
Long term is 100%. It always has been to become Olympic champion. And just sort of complete my dream.
That'd be amazing to do that. And do you feel like that would inspire a generation of, you know, I mean, what sort of inspired, I'm just curious to know what inspired you, you know, in terms of, you know, Taekwondo. Obviously it's a great, you know, around the world it's a great sport, and in GB the profile, you know, well, it's getting, you know, bigger now, but it's probably not as big as some countries. But what was your sort of inspiration? And do you feel by sort of, you know, winning an Olympics, it would inspire a generation of sort of young people to take it up and have a go?
Yeah, well, I definitely was inspired in 2012 when I watched one of my idols from Serbia win the heavyweight division at the Olympics. And she was definitely one of my idols. And another one was actually one of the girls that I train with now, Bianca Lockton.
Yeah.
I always looked up to her when I was growing up. She was that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be world champion, and just fight how she fights and have that aggression she has. So I think by winning the Olympics, it definitely puts you in the spotlight for younger athletes and young kids to look up to you and aspire to be what you are then and there, because for them, if they want to go to the Olympics, you're their end goal. You've done what they want to do, so it definitely puts you in place to become an idol or a role model for them.
And what was it like for you, Rebecca, to train with someone that you'd looked up to? Was it sort of, obviously you sort of, done very well in your own right, and you've been doing martial arts for a long time, but what was it like for yourself to be training with someone that you sort of, you watched and sort of had as an idol?
At first I was definitely a little bit starstruck. Definitely went a bit shy. But I've learned so much from Bianca. Day in and day out, she's so helpful, gives me so many tips and just different ideas and stuff. And she does that still to this day, so every single day. So it's amazing to have gone so young and to be getting that advice, and that helps so young and to be learning off of them for such a long period of time. It was just amazing, incredible, and opportunity that not many people around the world have.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of, it may be sort of outside your sort of, remit, I'm not sure, but in terms of the Taekwondo and GB at the moment, what's it like in general? Is it sort of growing in popularity from what you can see since you started, or where do you sort of see it at the moment in terms of the sort of the popularity of Taekwondo?
I think it's definitely increasing. I think we're through obviously Jade having won 2 Olympics, that helps put Taekwondo on the map massively, especially in the UK. The amount of girls and young girls that you see at younger competitions, it's incredible. It's definitely more popular now since when I first started Taekwondo, which is amazing. It's absolutely incredible to see.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And what's the pathway, Rebecca, in sort of getting to say where you are? So how does that work in sort of Taekwondo? Obviously, different sports have different sort of pathways, but you mentioned the sort of training camp there, and how does that work? I mean, in terms of, does someone sign up for like a club in their local area? Yeah.
So there's lots and lots and lots of clubs throughout the UK. It's really simple to find a club. Just go online, there's even a club finder on GB's website. And from then, when you make it into your club, there's lots of different trials that you can do to make it into each team. So there's a cadet team, which is the youngest, a junior team, and then obviously the senior team. So through each age group, you do phases and trials to get into that team. So all you really need to do for the cadets and juniors is turn up to trials, and if they like you and you meet the criteria, there's a good chance you'll get into that team, and then that's where you manage to progress through that pathway, the development pathway. And then if you're doing really well and you're winning competitions, and Gary Hall, who's our performance director, or the coaches see something in you that they like, you might be asked to come in and join the academy.
No, absolutely. And I think the thing of Taekwondo is a pathway to the Olympics. I think that's sort of really, I suppose that's really appealing from a martial arts perspective to a lot of people. I suppose with yourself, sort of starting very young, were you aware? At what point were you aware that there was an opportunity to sort of compete at the highest level, Rebecca? Sort of the pathway in terms of for GB to compete potentially in the Euros, the World Championships, the Olympics. When did you become aware that was an opportunity to maybe to go down that road?
I knew pretty much as soon as I started Taekwondo that it was in the Olympics, and obviously, like I said, that was something that I wanted to do. Probably more towards my early teens. So I started when I was 5, probably when I was 13. That's when I realised that there was such a good pathway to get into the senior team, the Olympic team. So as soon as I found that out, I did everything I could to try and get into that team.
Yeah, and absolutely. And in terms of, say, if any listeners are sort of considering getting into Taekwondo, any age really, I suppose, looking to go down, but to join a club, what would you say? I mean, I suppose for some people, it may be a little bit daunting, sort of to turn up and go and that sort of first lesson. But is there anything that you can any tips you can give to maybe sort of settle people's nerves going in there? I mean, you sort of walk into the into the club, and you see people obviously kicking, also and you kind of think, wow. But what would you say to anyone sort of considering going into it and taking it up?
I think I would say don't be overwhelmed. You might see all of these kicks and it might look really, really difficult, but practice makes perfect, and all you have to do is practice it, and you'd be surprised at how easily and how quickly it comes. So just literally just give it a chance. Just give your everything in the sessions, and just give it a chance, and don't write it off too early. You might start and get beat up. I got beat up in my first few sessions, but all you have to do is keep persisting with it. Just trust the progress, and you'll be fine. You'll get there.
Yeah, and so in terms of the system, the belt system, the grading system, is that sort of something that sort of helped you to sort of focus? Was that part of your goals too, as well as competing for, say, GB? Did you have sort of one eye on sort of I'm not really familiar with the Taekwondo belt system, but was that something for you in terms of the gradings?
Yeah, so we have gradings, and I'm a black belt right now. I got my black belt when I was 10, so gradings is something to sort of get your belts, and there is, so we call it Kumse, and there's lots of different Kumse competitions. There's a GB Kumse team, but that was never really the side that was my passion. My passion was always the fighting side to it. That was a part of it that I fell in love with and I loved. So I sort of I got all my gradings that I needed to get my black belt, but as soon as I got my black belt, my focus went straight to fighting in competitions. Yeah,
and in terms of competitions, do you I mean, obviously it's for many athletes it's been a challenging year or so, and with the pandemic and things have changed. But do you have any sort of competitions coming up that you're sort of training for at the moment? Or?
Yeah, so I'm training for a competition in Bulgaria in 4 weeks' time, and then hopefully I'm hoping to maybe be able to fly with the team to Tokyo to be a training partner, a reserve athlete there.
Yeah.
Hopefully, and then like I said, the next big one will be the Olympics, the World Championship. Towards the back end of the year.
That'd be an amazing experience for you, Tokyo. I would have thought, Rebecca, to get a sort of feel for the Olympics, and absolutely, and sort of go from there. And sorry, the World Championships. Did you say all things being well, and in the world, where were they? The World Championships.
Yeah. So the World Championships are being held in China.
Okay.
In October, November time.
Yes.
So hopefully all going well, that will be the next major, the next big one for me.
And who would you say the sort of the obviously everyone's a rival in one sense that you compete against, and anything's possible on the day. But in terms of teams, strength of teams, from your sort of perspective, and obviously others might have in different divisions, it might be a different opinion. But who do you sort of see as the sort of the general front runners in the sport?
I think GB are very up there, if I'm honest. GB athletes are definitely ones to watch. Hopefully the ones that people don't want on their side of the draw. So I think we're very up there with being the best team in the world. But there's lots and lots of different teams who have different strengths and different weights. So it's hard to choose what team is the hardest to watch, the biggest front runner.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's just you're focusing on self and sort of taking the competition. Yeah.
I think it's one of them. You fight who's in front of you. Doesn't matter who it is. You commit to everything and you just fight who's there.
And I think it's great for the sort of public to hear and to listen to hear that GB's up there, and I'm sure a lot of people listening will have watched GB at sort of in major tournaments, in Olympics, and sort of obviously sport means a lot to people in this country, that's for sure. And do you feel that? Do you sort of feel that in terms of the backing? I mean, obviously Taekwondo, it's got, I would have thought it's got a huge participation. Obviously, it's not a mainstream sport like football, but do you guys sort of sense that that GB is behind you guys when you're sort of competing at the highest sort of level?
Yeah, 100%. Definitely, there's a massive backing for a smaller sport like Taekwondo, which is absolutely incredible. So yeah, you can definitely tell people are behind and people are hoping for the best for us all.
Absolutely. No, it's been a fascinating interview, Rebecca. I've sort of, found it really intriguing, and no doubt the listeners have too. And we sort of, wish you all the best, in your next competitions, and no doubt we'll sort of, keep an eye in Paris as and when it arrives, the Olympics, and I'm sure that you'll get there. But it's been great speaking to you. I really want to thank you for coming on the show. Thanks very much, Rebecca. It's great stuff.
Thank you.
Brilliant. That was Rebecca McGowan, who's a professional athlete at GB Taekwondo, a strong team. Many of us have sort of, watched the team participate in the games, and it's sort of great to see them do well. Rebecca McGowan on Friday Sport on Salford City Radio 94.4 FM with your host, Jimmy Petruzzi.